Our next guest is attorney Michele Byington of the Walker Byington firm in the Texas Law Shield Firearms Legal Defense Program, and also a fellow law school grad. What's going on, Michele?
Oh, you know, just fighting to protect your rights, Mr. Noir.
You're fighting to protect my rights? Don't you think I need protecting now, man? Sheesh. No, but absolutely. So how are things in Houston? You know, my good home city.
Things are warm. Things are getting very, very quickly. But I think things in Dallas are getting pretty crazy by the news that I've been watching, between that paramedic being shot at, and then there was a murder-suicide today in Irving. It's wild.
There are a lot of things happening in Dallas. Quite a few things happening in Dallas. Now, with respect to that, we had a guest on the show yesterday, who's known as the Santa Shooter, and we kind of briefly discussed his basically his experience with the legal system after what was a justified shooting, and so what I wanted to talk to you about is basically kind of give people a general understanding of the different dynamics that tend to take place whenever you do find yourself in a justified shoot or even a questionable shoot that hasn't been determined as being justified, right? So typically speaking, let's start from immediately afterwards, right? What typically tends to happen from your knowledge and your perspective after, let's say, you find yourself in a defensive shooting? Let's say someone comes in your home and you decide to take it to that point and pull out your gun and use it to defend yourself.
Okay, so first things first, make sure that threat is no longer a threat, right? We don't need to go and call 911 when perhaps his, accomplice is running through the front door to potentially do harm to you or save his buddy and then potentially do harm to you. So first things first, make sure you're safe. Second, call 911 immediately, because whether it's true or not, the person who actually calls 911 first is seen as the more credible individual. So we always advocate as lawyers, call 911. But as many of us know, 911 calls are recorded. Yeah. So please don't say anything stupid to 911, like, I just shot this guy that came in my house and whew, I feel good, I loved it, I got this great rush of adrenaline. Don't say that to 911. Yeah. It's going to be played in your trial a year later, and I'm going to have a very, very tough time arguing to a jury that you acted reasonably. Now, go ahead.
You saying that something just clicked off in my mind. So I'm kind of going in a different direction, but nonetheless still in the same sphere. So
let's go.
There's this kind of thought process in the gun industry, right, where the idea of modifying or heavily modifying your firearm could actually get you in more trouble if you have to use it in self-defense, with respect to it making it seem as if you wanted to kill someone, like you had this lustful desire to kill someone, therefore you wanted to make your gun as efficient as possible so that you could be the most efficient killer that you could possibly be. From your perspective and your experience, how true is that? How much of that is kind of just, what's the word I'm looking for?
Just silly paranoia.
Yeah, is that essentially what that is? Is that really a legitimate concern? Or
I think there's some credit that needs to be lended to that sort of mindset, because I mean, everything you do is going to be dissected in front of that jury. So if we get a prosecutor who says, "Oh my gosh, there's a 3-pound trigger guard on this," this is Murder Man Jones, and they are ready just to murder anybody that comes into their house, and they're going to like it. Well, it's our job as defense attorneys to basically take that sort of evidence that could potentially be seen as harmful and basically before trial go before a judge and do a suppression hearing, which is basically we file this motion to suppress the evidence that your handgun had a suppressor on it that you used for home defense. You were not a member of the mafia. The suppressor had nothing to do with the circumstances surrounding why you had to use deadly force. So we would actually try to get that evidence suppressed because it really isn't relevant to why you had to use deadly force against that individual who was attacking you or who unlawfully entered your home. Some judges buy it, some judges don't.
Yeah.
So it really just kind of depends on your jurisdiction and what judge you get in front of. But again, say that we do end up in trial and it does come in that you have this heavily modified handgun that is a crazy killing machine. It is our job to basically bring in experts and show the jury that this is actually what the lawful gun owner can possess, number one, and number two, that perhaps it helps in making the firearm actually more safe, and it's less likely to, I don't know, cause any other sort of collateral damage.
Yeah. You know, and it's interesting because I generally think that there is a bit of an overhype to the idea of modifying your gun, only to the point that it prevents me from doing so. Because I think the point you made was an excellent one. It really all boils down to what picture each attorney is painting and who does a better job at doing it.
Exactly.
And so what it tells me is, by and large, get a good attorney. because if the other side, if the prosecutor is a very good prosecutor, and you and I both know, we can generally argue both sides. If I wanted to take someone's firearm and create the case that your firearm made it so that you were actually more, that you had more of an intent to just want to kill somebody than just defend your life, I could pick some things off of your gun and probably make that argument. Whether or not they were a good argument or a true argument makes no difference. Now, how big of an issue does, let's say it goes all the way to trial, how important is picking a jury with respect to defending your client? Now, I asked the question knowing the answer, but I'll let you take it away.
I cannot express enough the importance of what's called voir dire. And voir dire is the process that we go through when we're selecting a jury. And using the terms like selecting a jury is kind of misleading because you don't actually pick jurors.
Yeah.
You actually
get rid of them.
You get rid of certain people that you don't want. So, for instance, I mean, if I were conducting a voir dire in a gun case, I would say, okay, who here, I'm a Texas attorney, who here has a Texas license to carry? And those who raise their hands, I would say, whew, okay, these are the people that I'm going to try to get to stay in this jury panel. Okay, is there anybody here who absolutely hates firearms and thinks that only law enforcement and military should have guns? And those people who raise their hands, I'm striking. I do not want them. Because at the end of the day, the people who determine whether you were justified in what you did, meaning that you are acquitted, you get to go home and love on your family that night, or to distinguish that same body of people will determine whether you acted unreasonably, which means you are now convicted, you are now going to prison, and you lose all of your freedoms. Yeah. So it is very, very important that the 12 people who end up on your jury are like-minded sort of individuals who will be able to basically put themselves in your shoes to kind of look through your eyes to determine whether you acted in a justifiable, legal manner when you pulled the trigger.
Gotcha. Now, are there any other elements that that people tend to undervalue or overlook when it comes to dealing with a post-shooting? You know, of course, we've talked about, of course, picking a good attorney, because that attorney will essentially be able to do the best job making the case for you, but then also being able to pick a jury, so forth and so on. Are there any other elements that tend to fly under the radar that would put people in an advantage whenever they're having to deal with these legal components?
You know, I would have to say, in my experience, the best cases that I've had have been those people who are a little bit leery of law enforcement, and law enforcement comes to investigate the scene, and they say, okay, tell us your side of the story. What happened? And you get those people who just have vomit at the mouth and just say everything. And what we have to remember is that you're under a lot of stress. Your adrenaline has skyrocketed, and that causes all sorts of physiological changes in your body. This is not the time to be making a detailed statement that you are married to. And so the people who tell law enforcement upon arrival, I was the victim of a crime, there's the bad guy, I need a drink of water, I just need to collect my thoughts, I'm going to call my lawyer. Those people I have the best outcome with.
Gotcha.
And so something that a lot of people don't realize is that, you know, those statements that you make in the minutes after law enforcement arriving, you're married to them. And sometimes if you say something that doesn't add up with the physical evidence, we're in trouble.
Yeah, I can definitely see how that could be the case. You know, and that's a good point that you bring up, because I think, you know, in our minds at the moment, we think we are inherently and ultimately justified in our actions at that point.
Yes.
And we very well may be, but what we don't realize is that optics are everything, and the optics doesn't necessarily correlate with the truth, and so, you know, you could find yourself being emboldened to basically say exactly what happened, not realizing how that looks, because exactly. I think again, would you say this is correct or not? Before you say anything, think about how you would try to spin it to make it a bad thing. Do you think that is something that's realistic to do, or?
I mean, I think you need to look at it through all angles. Now, is this practical and realistic? You know, in the hour after you use deadly force, probably not.
Yeah.
But you have got to really take yourself out of your perspective and kind of try to take the view, you know, the 30,000-foot view. If I were looking in and this were someone else, what would I want to see? What would I want to hear? And what would sort of be that linchpin that would cause me to go to the reasonable side, to the justifiable side? Now, again, the realistic and the practical application of that, I don't know.
Awesome. So, well, unfortunately, we're out of time, but it was definitely good seeing you.
Good to see you, dear.
Always. I need to make it back out to Houston at some point. It's been too long. But no, thank you very much. And again, you know, you're always welcome here on the show. And it was good speaking with you.
Bud. Hope to see you soon.
Yes, ma'am. You take care. When we come back, we're taking a look at a shiny new 308 from Rise Armament.